Hello, 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 and welcome to Survivor NSFW Rewind, Professor Tim Watches Borneo. I'm your host, Karen Eisenberg, and today we will be discussing episode 9, which should be called J for Jenna, but isn't. This is Karen Eisenberg, and today we will be discussing episode 9, which should be called J for Jenna, because I'm hearing what I said a minute ago in my earbuds. This is extremely...
Sorry.
Are we okay? Are you hearing me now?
No, we're hearing you now. It's
we're
okay.
Fine. All right, let's see if this stops. So, like we're talking about, this is the fun thing about going live. You get to see all the how the sausage is in fact made. So today, I am joined as always by my co-host, Professor Tim Wilson of Survivor UK. I'm sorry, of the Circle UK. How are you doing today? Yes, he can also survive.
You thrive.
I feel I am a survivor of the Circle. So,
what's going on in your neck of the woods, Tim? Besides that ridiculous vest that you're wearing, which I think you also wore on the TV show. No,
I think I probably did. I don't have that many. I have about 7. I think 7 or 8, and so they just get revolved. And every so often, I think I need a little color. And then I've rather overdone the red, and also this boy here.
Hello.
We're getting to the wrong time of the year, and he's starting to shed fur. I mean, it's like walking around with an overcoat. When he sits on your lap, you just get up, and there's sort of so much stuff. And so my red waistcoats have started to go a sort of puce color. And I just thought we've got to pull out something else, and and the cardigans eventually they get sort of eaten through and clawed through because because both the cats like sitting inside.
I am also a cat owner. I have one cat who weighs about 8 pounds, and her hair is just everywhere all the time.
I always started off as a dog lover, and I went to the dog breeders, and I got myself I found a little golden retriever, and he was about this big, and he peed on my leg, and I thought that's the one for me. There are about 20 of them scurrying around. I'm the one that's going to make my leg warm, and he did. And then I went off to a cat breeder, and she gave me my older female cat Hannum. I got her home. And took her to the vet, and the vet said, "Oh, she's got ringworm. She's terribly, terribly contagious. You're probably infected as well. You can't have any other animals for 3 months." She got shaven. She looked like one of those sort of. She looked like with a few tufts of hair at the end of her tail, very miserable. And she spent about 3 months living in my waistcoat and my dressing gown pocket. And now that's where she home is. You see, so that's where she will go. And it's quite comforting to have this warm thing. So I feel as if I'm sort of emulating pregnancy or something. But I don't know what it feels like. But every so often, it's either that or the scene in Alien, because she sort of pops up in the middle of a anyway, so I then had to ring the dog owners, and I couldn't bring myself to say that I'd now got a cat with ringworm. So I just said I'd changed my mind. I lost my deposit, and I lost the chance of having a Labrador retriever, which I thought was what's that. And she became so clingy. I didn't think she would accept any other breeds of animal, any other types of animals. So I eventually got Bay, and she was furious with me. She hit me.
That's what I'm worried about. So I was getting a second cat. All right.
A snap, and she had such a fierce expression on her face. I don't think she's ever really forgiven me for bringing this boy into the house.
Are they friends now, or still they give each other their distance?
Well, they sleep together, but I don't think that means they're very friendly. I think probably money is exchanged. I don't know. I think it's a needs-must relationship.
All right, I'm going to bring my
person.
Someone said I'm just going to introduce. I'm going to say a couple of things. I'm going to bring in our guest, and then we're going to talk Survivor. First of all, I just have to say, of course, today I am modeling the Fire Token T-shirt from johnnyfairplay.com. So this celebrates both the new Survivor currency and the wonder of medical marijuana and otherwise. So that's why I just decided I had to have it. I have to figure out how to get a graphic or something so that I can put the t-shirt up on the screen. I haven't figured that out. But anyway, with all of these, all of these are available on johnnyfairplay.com. That's with no H, Jonny. And remember that with every purchase, you get a phone call from Johnny Fairplay. I also just wanted to say one other thing today before we really get into Survivor. I've been told that nobody can tell, but I can tell. There's just something that I kind of want to share with my listeners. I never thought I have a very weird path to being a podcaster. I'm a retired lawyer. I have very fancy law degrees. I work for fancy law firms. I was also a high school and college debater. I'm very comfortable in front of a mic. I don't get stage fright, which sounds like I would be the perfect podcaster. But a few years before I discovered podcasts, 10 years ago this month, I had a stroke. And it turned out afterwards I had several before and possibly several after, but this was the big stroke, right, that you couldn't miss it. And I completely lost my ability to speak. And I also some, weakness on my right side. And in case you could tell, I can talk. My English has come back 98%. My Hebrew, which I learned mostly as an adult, less so. But so obviously I sound fine. And again, maybe I'm just being insecure, but there's certainly times when I can't find the right word, or sometimes even just my mind goes blank in the middle of a thought. And so I just wanted to come clean about that and just be able to talk about this openly with my viewers. So if I just say, brain fart or oops and start something over, this is 2020 and I hope that people are okay with that. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Now it's time to bring in our guest, Lisa Stanger, who I am also very happy to be a personal friend. And you can tell people, or I can tell people how we became friends. I'm one of those annoying fans that messaged you.
It's not annoying. It's not annoying.
And said I look forward just to seeing you play and all that. And then she won. So we're not going to spend much time talking about Survivor New Zealand because I just have to assume that most of you have not seen it. You don't watch International Survivor. If you don't, I really, really recommend it. Not only because, there's new stuff because we don't know when we're going to get another US season, but in many ways, the international versions are better than new American Survivor. For many reasons. So we can talk about those reasons, but basically it's better stuff. It's a little harder to access. It can be accessed. If anybody who is a patron, if you're a patron of some other places, they have links. And if you're a patron of Survivor NSFW and you want to watch any international seasons, Lisa's or Australia or any of the others, message me and I can help you out with that. But basically the way Lisa played, and Lisa, feel free to correct me, but basically, so Lisa is, at least at the time, you were a school librarian, right? Yeah. And she's quite small physically, right? And you did something that very few people would do. You were very open about being a Survivor superfan, which is something that generally people don't do, because if you tell the rest of your cast that you know the game, that makes you look like a threat. Right. So most people hide this. Lisa didn't do that. She basically told her old tribe, I'm a super fan. I'm living the dream. And they loved it. And because she looked so non-threatening, they liked to help her. So every time she would get something, that if you want a tribal immunity, you go tick. I got to hold the Survivor, the immunity item, tick. I made the merge, tick. And she ticked her way all the way to a win. She told these people that she knew this game and they let her win anyway. So there are, again, many, many, many different ways to win this game. So Lisa, why did you think, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Survivor New Zealand, but this is a more general question. Why did you decide to do it that way on your season? Because I think it's great, but most people don't do it.
Yeah, because I've watched so much Survivor and I, listened to all the podcasts and everything. I knew that you can't really put up a facade about who you are for 39 days.
Great.
And I also... So what I wanted to do was think about what makes me me, what are my assets, what might be my sort of threats in this game, and just craft it all into a strategy that it would mean that it all was a benefit. you know.
And it worked, which always shows. And this is really the most important piece of advice. Like, I would say, you could give advice like, don't tell people you're a super fan. But the most important
doesn't work.
Advice, no, but I was going to say, but the most important piece of advice I could give to anybody who's thinking about playing Survivor or any other game is just what Lisa said. If you have enough self-awareness to figure out, okay, what am I good at? What am I not good at? How will people see me? Will people see me as a threat, and in what ways? And how can I try to alleviate that? And you did all of that by kind of turning the conventional wisdom on its head. Now, Query, is the next person who plays Survivor New Zealand going to be able to? I assume that then they won't be able to do the same thing. That now that if they hear that anybody has any knowledge at all of the game, they're going to be the first out. Do you think? What do you think?
No, I don't think so, because on our season, pretty much everyone, the way they cast it, pretty much everyone really liked Survivor, knew a lot about it, or maybe some people said they didn't, but I'm pretty sure everyone did. And so no, I don't think it wasn't seen as a threat. There's a combo threat. So JT, someone else who played, was seen as way more threatening than me, because he was seen as sneaky and he knew a lot about the game. Whereas no one saw me as sneaky until the very end, when I wanted them to see me as sneaky.
Right. And I wasn't criticizing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, right, I won season 2 and nobody's going to be able to replicate my game going forward. And that's fine. You got your money. It's not a criticism. I was just wondering, maybe if you are playing with people who are all fans, but again, even on that cast, you were kind of the super fan or one of the super fans.
Yeah, I was known as one of the super fans, and I knew I would be, because when you get a cast on a reality TV show, you think about I think it's really helpful to think about, why are they casting you? What are they going to want to get from you? What situations are they going to put you in? And how are they going to want you to act? Because then it sort of gives you a bit of insight. And so I knew that was the angle. So I knew that if I said I wasn't a fan, and then I get on the mat and the host says, Lisa, you're a super fan, this must be pretty amazing for you. Well, that's all out the window. Like, production, it can be, the worst. They're the 19th player that can.
We've spoken about that
game.
Quite a lot on this podcast, about the different ways the production can influence the game. I don't think there's so much of that in this episode, but there certainly have been plenty of others.
Really? I think there were points in this episode which again sort of stood out as production moments. But we'll come to those. And I Lisa, I take my hat off to you. Well, I literally can take my hat off. but I take my hat off to you today, because I think you've got it absolutely right. Not only about playing one of these games, but actually about playing life. If you have knowledge about who you are, it's not all you are, because you've got so many levels of yourself, and there's so many selves. Which you could opt for, but the self that tends to be projected, and if you understand that, then you also understand what other people are seeing, and then with television, actually, what they want is more of that. I think I was certainly I was aware that that who I was in the circle was an element of was a sort of heightened version of who I am in real life, and I love being me, and I will be more me if I'm given an opportunity, a bit of rope, and I will get into all manner of scrapes by trying. The other thing is, I think with reality television and television in general and acting, is you have to try very hard when you're on camera and when you're there to be in the moment, and in reality TV you're there all the time. So it's so difficult, because actually what we want to do is live in the past or live in the future. We don't want to live in the present, and it requires quite an effort. Does that work?
Yeah. It resonates with me. Like, I think especially when you're in a heightened situation, like a survival situation or a reality TV show or whatever, having that presence and being able to have that space. I can't remember who says it, but there's a famous quote. There's a space between action and reaction, and that's where that's where the meaning
is.
Yeah.
And if they can capture that moment, And there was something Woody, who of course has been in New Zealand recently for about 6 months. He was there.
Oh, did he get stuck here?
Yeah, he got. Oh, yeah. I think it wasn't. I think it wasn't a regret at all. I think he was in seventh heaven. Who wouldn't be? I mean, place. So you're so lucky. He's stuck on a farm. So why would you not want to be stuck on a farm in New Zealand? I mean, it's like just going. It's like being a hobbit. Who knew that the Cotswolds, which is where hobbits I think came from, would find their genuine manifestation in New Zealand? And why not? Why not? But I saw him the other day, and he's doing a thing now called Gogglebox, and he's really perfected this look of sort of incredulity. And I thought, I know that look, and it's and it's sort of, he's got it. He's there with the camera, and you see inside his soul. And I think, this is just wonderful. And there were moments in the moments which I saw in the show where he was on screen before I sort of got frightened and stopped watching. And
it's confronting.
It's there, and Bay has it, of course.
Natural.
And cats live in the present. He has no concern for the past or the future. He's simply concerned about present reality.
That is true. That's the whole point.
Reality that I think there is.
That's the whole point of mindfulness, right? And all that, which is, I'm very much, I can't do yoga. It annoys me. Or if I try to meditate, then I just, whatever. Let's put it this way. My brain is not designed for meditation. But what you're saying in terms of playing a show, I think you're absolutely right. And so the other thing that I was just thinking when the two of you were speaking was, I just wonder, and Lisa, I'm not putting you are not nearly as old as Tim and I are, but you're not 20. But you're not 20 years old. And I do wonder why this is one of the things that somewhat, when I say older players, I mean like anybody over the age of 25.
Yeah.
Right. There's lots of disadvantages for people like us, but I feel like maybe one of those advantages could be this kind of self-knowledge.
I think that can be true. It seems like when people get to a certain age, or whatever that age is, they become more interested in, less interested in the external, more interested in the internal growth. Really, I know for me, as I've gotten older, I've realized, and going on Survivor was a big part of learning this, that it's just about the people, connection with people is really all you have, and everything else is sort of immaterial. So yes, I think perhaps, or you could say that people, if you look at the circle, so you've got Woody, who's 18, and he seems like really someone who knows himself, but he hasn't had 40, 50, 60 years of these entrenched strategies and beliefs about himself. He's got sort of a freshness and a a pliability.
Yeah, and Woody is
he's got an immediacy. And so many. And he's not got these sort of preconceptions and prejudices which often come with youth. And this is lovely, actually.
Yeah, I think that something I heard which really resonates with me is that as we grow up, a lot of what we think of about our personality or our core sort of being or our self is just a whole lot of maladaptive coping strategies. And I'm not saying that's true for everyone and everything about themselves, but I think it's quite true. So I think there's a
right. But my point is just whatever. It's not an age thing, but if one of the things that I would kind of urge anybody who's thinking about going on any of these shows, again, is to get some real unvarnished opinions from the people around you. If you have people like this who can do this for you, in terms of ask your family and friends, right? What the questions that Lisa asked herself, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? I mean, again, if you have the ability, if you have that sense for yourself, you don't have to ask anybody else, right? But most people don't have that. One way or the other, you have to have where you have a clear sense of how people see you and how they react to you.
I was going to butt in and say, I also think the other thing about reality TV and TV in general and theatre is vulnerability, and that plays across incredibly strongly. But of course, it's very difficult to be vulnerable or to allow the vulnerability out if you're trying to win the game. It's very difficult to live in the present if you're planning your strategies about the future. So the whole reality TV game show thing flies in the face of all the things that actually make it good reality. So you've got to sort of you've got to wear two hats, and it's a tough nut to crack. Certainly with The Circle, when I was watching other seasons from other countries where there's far more strategy, it was so obvious when people got it wrong, when people sort of played the game rather than played the television audience, and they were out on their ear within seconds. You've got to have this awareness of where you are, have an awareness of what you're doing, and keep your humanity or your vulnerability. I think those two things go together. Center stage, and I would recommend, if anybody's going to do any reality TV show, that they take their cat along, because when you've got an animal with you, you are grounded in reality, because animal is all about food and poo, and
and cuddles.
And nothing is more life nourishing. I mean, you probably are not nourished by the latter as by the former. But the other day, my partner for a joke gave me some cat food. It was quite tasty, actually. It was very strong texture.
So this is what happened. I let you watch Survivor, where they eat was a dog food, and now you decided you had to try it yourself?
I didn't decide this. I think this is in the spirit of one of these sort of Viennese jokes, which so beloved by Mozart and and The Circle and Survivor. We're
I want to talk about the whole idea of Thai and turning the chicken, mark the chicken into a pet. But people came here to listen to us talk about Borneo and not Khao Pho So, because there have been times where people have basically looked for the solace of a pet on Survivor. It's happened. But not on Borneo.
Pets were already there on Survivor, and this is the point. The pets weren't there in The Circle because we were alone, but the pets are there in every nook and cranny. They're all fellow contestants. Did you have a strong relationship with your fellow contestants? Were you so adversarial towards them, or did you have a stronger relationship with production, Lisa?
Because I know, Survivor is actually like a proper survival situation, like it is intense. Like there's times when you think, you might die, or I was so sick afterwards, it was really, really weak. So it's such a strange situation where you build these intense bonds based on trying to help other people eat and live and, survive. And then at the same time, you're sort of strategizing against them and not trusting what they say. So like you trust them with your life, but you also don't trust them an inch. And it's that tension, which is like psychologically grueling. Production, I always knew, I think maybe some other people had a closer relationship with production than me, because I know so much about reality TV. I knew that production was just trying to screw me, and they didn't care about me at all.
Yeah, see, Tim, that was your mistake. You went on a show never really having seen any of these, so you didn't understand how this works. Lisa knew very well how this works. And
well, it's true on the one hand, but on the other hand, because I've known so much about the backstage of television and theatre, I knew instinctively that production was there as the professional, and was going to make sure it was incredibly good television. And as long as I was with them, I was in that environment where we were making a very good product. Now, whether or not I was going to come off well out of that or not, that was another matter. But to be involved in the center of very good entertainment, providing I played along with the system and providing I worked out where the system was going, I mean, if you're adversarial with the system, everything falls to pieces.
Yeah.
And I know people who are or have been, and not only do they hurt themselves, and not only will they not succeed, it's not a game you can win. But equally, I think the show is harmed. And a good producer will realize, oh, here's somebody who's just being difficult. Let's make them be more difficult. And a good producer, I'm sure, would have a way around that. But I, you know, all the people that I've met who've had problems with production during the show, it sort of backfired. They just couldn't. You've got to be in tandem with production, and production will then help you, I think, to be the best and be at whatever you're being. The best villain, the best hero, the best klutz.
Well, it's funny that you're saying this, Johnny. Tim, because on Johnny's season, I was just thinking about Johnny's story again. I was not there, but according to rumor and innuendo, I mean, we spoke about this. He was on the show last week, and on the one hand, yes, he understands the purpose. He understands they're trying to make a TV show. He knows how to make a good TV show. On the other hand, I think Johnny has been quite open about some of the ways in which he might not have been the easiest contestant to deal with. But in terms of them making, I was going to say, and did they make him look bad as a result? I don't think so.
No.
But it's certainly been known to happen.
You only have to meet Johnny, and you immediately can see why he was cast. You immediately can see that vibrant personality. I can see it in you, Lisa, as well. I mean, so I think if you're a producer and Lisa or Johnny walks into a room, you immediately think, heaven, I've struck gold. Because you can see it in your eyes, you can see it in the sort of way you respond to the slightest hint that I give you, and you're there ready. There's not going to be a gap. There's not going to be a gap because I know that you're already 2 steps ahead of me, and you'll play along, and it's wonderful. And I felt it with Johnny. I feel it with you, and it's all praise to these producers. I mean, I was overproduced like mad. I met so many producers before, in the space of about 4 days before I actually got on the show. I was sort of speed pushed through the process once they decided.
So this is a good question, Lisa, because I actually don't know the answer to this for New Zealand. What is the casting process like? Is it similar to the US? Like in terms of, obviously I know there are probably certain things you can't share, but anything you can share, people might be interested to hear.
No, and the Survivor New Zealand's pretty casual. I can share everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I love it.
It's so different. It's so different. Like the whole time something would happen and I'd just be like, yep, Survivor New Zealand. This is not true. This is not full Survivor. So what happened was you sent in a video and an application, and I think your gameplay needs to start from there. Mine certainly did, the way I, crafted the video and the application, obviously. And even in that, like I made the things that, like, there was always questions about sports and your athletic ability. And I could have just been like, not applicable. Instead, I put all these jokes about how good I was at like shooting the basketball game at our local arcade and stuff like that. But anyway, so there was that.
Was that not true?
No, it's true. I'm really good at the basketball game at my local arcade. Right. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, there was that. Then there was a Skype interview. Then there was another Skype interview, and then there was a psychological test, like, I don't know, 300 or 400 questions, and they're like, do you think people can fundamentally change? Yes or no? Have you ever violently hurt someone? Yes or no? Are you addicted to drugs? Yes or no?
Right. I one of those. My goodness. And I didn't do the video at the beginning at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, Yeah,
I was just going to say, I think those kind of tests are pretty much universal, but then you see some of these people who have been on some of these shows and you wonder, how did they ever pass that test? And people claim that producers that, they look for the craziest people, the most unstable people, and those are the ones that they cast.
Yeah, well, I mean, like in my case, it's also, self-reporting. So I don't know, if you had like violently threatened someone, I'm not sure if you'd just be like, oh, yes.
I would hope that they would have, certainly in the US, you would think that they would have done a bit of research on you.
No, well, no.
Not really. Okay.
That's how come. Yeah, you won't know this, Tim, but on my season, 2 people got cast that were best friends. But they didn't.
Did they know about each other when they?
Mm-hmm.
No, so they were best friends at they were best friends through primary school and high school, and then they sort of went their separate ways at uni. But that was only a few years ago, and then they both got cast. And so if the slightest bit of research would have uncovered that they knew each other.
They turned up together, and oh my goodness, I know you.
Yeah, and they kept it secret. It was that's part of the reason why I won. Although I could have won without it, but whatever. Long story.
So they got cancelled out early on.
No, they didn't. One of them made it. One of them made it to the end, and I think he would have won if it hadn't come out that these guys were actually friends. But if they hadn't been friends, he wouldn't have made it to the end. It was this sort of it's just this part that didn't fit the whole season. It was like, why is this happening? Why are these votes going like this? And I could not work it out. And then at the end, it was like, oh, that's why. So yeah, not much research about New Zealand.
It's really not that surprising if you've got people who are applying for a show and they are best friends, or they have been best friends. One of the reasons people are friends is because they have things in common.
Yeah,
and so it's likely they will be drawn to the same sort of programs and the same sort of competitions. It's not that. Like twins, separated twins, finding themselves
all the same things. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we share the same mother.
No, but what I found really interesting, and maybe they couldn't get around it, but that they were very open, or at least we felt like the viewers were open about the fact that this happened, because on HHH and season 35 of Survivor, right, this was not shown on the show. But Lisa, are you familiar with this? That Allie and Ryan knew each other.
Yeah.
Right. So that there were 2 people, same thing, who were cast, and they were not nearly as close. They weren't best friends, but they were at the same university. Yeah. At about the same time, which to me would have been enough to ask some questions. And it turns out that they had friends in common. I think he helped her move a mattress once. But I think their decision, I don't think either of them told the producers, because I guess they first saw each other when you first get there. I'm sorry, we'll go back to what happened in New Zealand. I want to hear the rest of the New Zealand story. But when everybody gets to the location, they're still on for several days. They still can't speak to each other, while they do the press and everything else. And I guess they just both made an independent decision not to say anything, because they were fearful that if they did, one of them would be taken off the show.
They get kicked off. Yeah.
So what do you think happened with New Zealand? Did they just didn't think there was a way out? Do you know anything about the decision process?
Yeah, there's no alternates. It's New Zealand Survivor.
They don't have any alternates. So then, fine. No way. You just know each other. We're going to go for it, right?
Yeah. There
isn't a pool of extra people that they could use.
The US has that again.
No way.
New Zealand does not have that.
In the circle, I know there's about sort of 20 contestants who never get on.
Yeah.
And you think, well, it's awful, because they get their 70 pounds a day for sitting in a hotel room and doing absolutely nothing.
And then they never get on the show.
And they never get on the show, and nobody ever knows they had anything to do with it. And I think, I believe they get to, we'll put you on the next series.
So you can do this again. You can sit in a hotel room for a month again.
Yeah.
Right. While we decide
and do nothing.
Well, they probably do some casting during the season at that point, because based on who goes home and what they're seeing, they decide who would be the best person to put in at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So Lisa, you guys, like I said, you said you were there. There were 2 people who knew each other. It was very important to the way that the season played out, which is right. So that's what you were saying. So and that was the next step. So you do the psychological evaluation, and then
that's the end.
That's it. So there was no finals. You never went somewhere to a hotel, like you said, in business. Because normally what they do in the US is they fly out 50, 60 people, right, for a cast of 16 to 20. And so they still do, like Lisa said, there's a few rounds of interviews on the phone, possibly on Skype, whatever. But then at some point, they put the people who are left, the finalists, on a plane. They pay for all of this. You fly to LA. They put you in a hotel room, where you can have no contact with anybody. It's kind of like being on the circle. And then they do the psychological evaluations, and you meet everybody. But again, this might just be an issue of budget, because I'm assuming that, Survivor didn't do that in the early seasons either. So they did this. You did all the casting from home. They cast you, and then what do they tell you? What do they not tell you? Did they tell you where you were going? What did they tell you in terms of clothing? I just always find this interesting, because it could be very different from the US.
Yeah. They gave us like inaccurate information. I think I have this theory that the document they sent out telling us what to wear and what to bring and what the temperature was going to be was the same document they used for season 1, where it was filmed in Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the info, Thailand.
All right.
So yeah, they really just told us the wrong stuff.
And they just gave you all the information that they gave to the cast of people who were going to Nicaragua.
Well, that's my pet. This is my pet theory. That's just my idea that they just copied and pasted. Because there was one person sort of handling all the pre. You know how when you go out there and you're sort of sequestered and you're not meant to be talking to anyone and to stop pre-gaming, there was one person looking after our entire cast of 18 people. 16 people? 18 people. I don't even remember. And it just was not enough.
Did you meet any of those people when you were sequestered?
Yeah, all of them. Like it was ridiculous.
You actually got onto the
we're like eating meals together and traveling like on like 8-hour bus rides, sitting next to each other with one person at the front of the bus, like, hey, no talking, and we're just like, yay.
Right.
and meanwhile, people are having conversations in sign language or scribbling or something.
Yeah. No, just talking, just flat out talking.
Really? Oh, and she's like, no talking, and you would just ignore her and keep talking?
Well, I wouldn't so much. But
how much do you think all that pre-show sequestering influenced the way the show itself developed? Did it give you an advantage?
I think there were definitely some people who went out earlier because of things that had happened in the way they were things that happened in the bus and stuff like that. Like I said, like I started playing like as soon as I turned up at the airport. Before I even saw anyone, I was like, okay, I'm playing now, I'm doing it.
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
And some people
that is always the way you should play. But again, in the US, they are much more careful about making sure you don't speak whatever. But people still talk about this. There's smiles and there's nods and there's looks. But I am just flabbergasted, but not really surprised that, like you said, that but that's very different from an 8-hour bus ride where you can just talk to anybody about anything.
yeah, exactly. Like, so we knew all the people, and it was weird. Like, so when they did the first confessionals, they're like, so you'd say something like, they'd say, who do you like? And I'd say, wow, I really like how, Matt and I grew up in the same town or something. And they'd say, no, you can't say that. Say, I really like that guy in the blue shirt. He seems friendly or something.
Right. But you're not supposed to know anybody's names yet.
Yeah. Oh, there was just one other thing that happened. So they had a media day beforehand. We were doing all our interviews, but they didn't make sure that all the interview people were separate, or they didn't keep an eye on us when we were going between the interviews. So I was like walking past everyone's interviews and like not trying to be sneaky, just trying to go from my interview to the next interview. And I heard people say things like about how they were going to play the game or what they were going to keep secret from other people or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, Survivor New Zealand. This is.
I must say on the circuit, people were incredibly professional about that. And we were blindfolded and ear-muffed. And I think I must have looked like Princess Leia.
Well, look at what I'm wearing, Tim. So.
Oh, no, it was more extreme. I think it was really extreme. I practically become some sort of new mammal. But the thing which was so lovely was I was guided everywhere by these by these runners who would sort of stick their hands on me and sort of move me around. I think, oh, just keep moving me.
Yeah.
I'm so needy and I just want attention, and please just put your hands anywhere. And I was in sort of seventh heaven, and then you were pushed into a room with fruit. I thinking, well, that's not a pleasure. Come and go for another walk down the corridor. And I loved all that. And then when we came off the show, I think they must have seen all the Brazilians coming in because they were all being sort of propelled around, and I think I think some of them didn't look very happy about it. I thought you're on the wrong show, mate. Just enjoy this. Yeah. This is the best thing about the show. You didn't have any of this of moving around. You missed a treat. We
just had one very grumpy, 21-year-old PA who was just like talking to me like I was a naughty little kid.
Yeah, well, teacherism. Teachers never stop being teachers, do they? But the best thing on the circle was, other than being propelled around the corridors by these lovely people, I can't remember all their names now. I just think of their hands. But the best thing was towards the end of the show. I think it was explained to me that there was a lot of nonsense about nuts. Nobody had a nut allergy, but there were two people in the show who were deeply allergic to cats, and so we go up to the influencer room, and I would of course leave a trail of cat hairs everywhere.
Yeah.
And then James would discover them and have a sort of fit. And come out in spots and sort of unable to breathe and stuff. He's very, very allergic. So when it came to the point where James and I had to meet, I had about 5 runners sort of rubbing me down. It took about 2 hours, and this happened twice, I think. And I just thought, just keep going, lower, and
massage.
I'm sure there's a bit you missed. It was just delightful. All that attention for me, and I think, how did I deserve such pleasure? And that was great. But yeah.
Right. So these people came to listen to us talk about episode 9, which Mario Lanza, who completely forgotten why we were here. No, Mario Lanza, who was our guest a few weeks ago, calls this possibly one of the great episodes, or if the great episodes of Survivor. And so this is something I was interested in what you thought, because the point is that this is written almost as if it's fiction, right? It's supposed to be, the fall of Richard, except it isn't. We'll see it as we go through, but this is kind of they did such a good job, I feel like, of setting us up. We really do think for about 40 minutes that Rich is going home, right? And Jenna gets the letter. I mean, we're going to get through all of these things once, but this is, on the one hand, it's an episode where not much happens, right?
No.
On the other hand, like I said, just as a piece of theater, I just found it very interesting.
Well, I did think that Richard might be going home, but then I thought it's unlikely because he's such an important player, and there's still 2 or 3 more episodes to go.
But just for as you're learning to read the edit, that is not something that I think anybody should assume. You can be a big player. Some people just say, but people can be a big player and get a big edit and go home even before the merge. So it would have made perfect sense for Rich to go home.
That's like that's like Psycho, isn't it? You get your incredibly and kill her off in an hour. I've got a slightly rude. I've got a slightly rude sentence written down on my notes. Can I read it out?
Sure, please.
It says lots of rich bitching.
Rich bitching, people bitching about Rich.
No, right. That's what it was, and it's literally the whole of the first half of the episode is one person after another saying how awful Richard is.
Right.
And I just thought, I don't buy this. This is a setup. I felt it was a setup from the. Maybe I'm just wise to this sort of stuff now.
I think you probably are.
Well, you've got about 20 years of not reality TV viewing experience, but TV and media viewing experience that people watching it at the time did not have.
Not really, because I've avoided reality TV.
No, but it's like Karen said. This is sort of verging into like a fictional storyline. It's like the even flow of the story. So.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, we've got Sean saying, "I love Rich, but."
We'll get there. Right, we'll get there. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've had somebody in the chat. I just want to tell you. So Sluka said, "Lisa, you're the best Australian to ever play." Now, Sluka, unfortunately, Lisa is not quite Australian. She's from New Zealand, but she does think you're one of the best to ever play. So I just wanted to make sure that you saw that.
I'm so pleased with your neighbor.
So the first bit that we see is as generally happens is that the fallout from the night before. So this is when it's finally all out, and Lisa's laughing.
Yeah, it cracks me up so much. Yeah.
So they're really, obviously, they've been talking about the possibility of the alliance for a while, and and lying. They've been pussyfooting around this until the last tribal, where Jeff asked them flat out, "Is there alliance?" And they lied, right? Yeah. And Rich and Rudy and Sue, they have no problem with this, right? But Kelly does, right? We know also, obviously, Colleen. So the fact that Colleen doesn't like it, that and Colleen is our narrator this episode also. I want to point this out because we heard almost nothing from her while Greg was around. And she had been kind of portrayed just as being kind of Greg's kitten, right? But now that he's gone, she is our narrator. And basically, Colleen, I feel, and Mark Burnett feels, and historian, most people seem to feel, that basically Colleen is standing in for the viewer here. They were assuming, they were right, that a lot of people were going to be upset about this idea about, lying on national TV. And Colleen, was comfortable. She doesn't want to do all of this for the money. But the one that is important to look at is Kelly, right? Because Kelly has been part of the Tagi 4, and she does lie, right, at the previous tribal. I think the first thing they tried to ask her a question, she laughed and said, do I have to answer this? Mm-hmm. And she did, but it really doesn't sit well with her. That's why I said I'm going to put a pin in this when it happened last week, because she's really having second thoughts about this whole idea of the alliance and not just voting out the people you don't like. And she says, if I win, it has to be on my own. And so the whole question of Kelly's future in the alliance, and we'll get to the end, we'll see who she votes for. But obviously, this could be a big, big plot point. So, Lisa, do you have any? Yeah, Lisa. So first of all, I have to ask you. You lied. You had no problem with it. I have no problem with it. Everybody on Survivor and watching Survivor from season 2 on has no problem with it. But on the other hand, you didn't have a problem with it because you're such a big Survivor fan. But everything else I know about you would lead. I could see you being the kind of player who would have a problem with that. So did you struggle with this at all?
I really tried to keep the personal and actually this reminds me of something I saw in the Circle UK when James got revealed as being Sammy, and he said, yeah, okay, that was all a lie. I'm not a woman. I don't have a baby, but all the connecting we did, all the friendship we did, that was honestly me, and that's how I tried to play as well. That I didn't lie about anything to do. I didn't pretend I liked things I didn't like or act like I didn't do anything like that. That's another level of lying that I didn't want to do. But about who I was voting for or what I thought was a good idea, I lied about that for sure. When I went on Survivor, part of the reason why I was so good at it is because lying did come very naturally to me, because I just spent a lot of my life trying to fit in with other people and just, keep my head below the parapet and just go along. That was really my only aim, was just to, be accepted by the human tribe and just be as inoffensive as I could be. And that's a good asset for a Survivor player, but not what I want to do in my life now. So
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, but now I think if I played Survivor, when I played Sequester recently, I treated that entirely differently, because I don't want to have that comfort at lying that I did have then. I've been on a bit of an internal growth journey since then. I don't think there's anything morally wrong with it. It's a game and everyone agrees they're playing a game and they could be lying to you and you're lying to them. But I just think the comfort and dexterity I displayed at lying is something that was sort of born of a lot of things that happened in my life before then. And it's just a bit different now for me, I guess.
But I think it's about the consistency of the lie. And when you're lying on impulse like that, you can't keep it up. And this is one of the things that came out in the circle. But I think the whole thing about lying is the same thing that generates great novelists, great writers. A novel is a sustained lie. It's not the fact that it's a lie which is important. It's the fact that it's sustained over such a period of time, and it's developed so that it becomes the de facto truth. And the problem is when you're doing this sort of, when you're lying for advantage in a game situation, you will say the first thing that gets you that advantage, and you will forget what you said before. And even if you've got the greatest of memory, it will not be consistent. And I think it's rather like years and years ago when I was doing bits of theatre, because I had these sort of very pointed eyebrows, I was always being given sort of menacing and a sort of Christopher Lee type voice. I was always being given these menacing character parts. And I thought, well, yeah, I could end up as a Bond villain. I've now got the cat. But it sort of does something to your soul, which I think that sort of infantile lying also does something to your soul. Whereas this sort of grand scale lying, I think actually does something quite positive to your soul. You're developing fiction, and you're developing the ability to narrate and to be a part in your own story. And I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, it's a form of creativity for sure. Like you're crafting something. You're right. There's a big difference between that reactive infantile sort of lying, and then there's that crafting.
Which I think it's fundamentally negative and damaging in the same way as I think playing too many villains. And I love the villain voice. No, Mr. Bond.
I couldn't understand why they were casting you as villains, but when you just said that, it's like, yes, you do. You have the voice of a villain. Everything I know about you is so the opposite of a villain, but you do have that deep voice.
Well, I think the beard fluffs me out a little bit, and I sort of and the glasses do. But if I remove the beard and the glasses, then I got that face, which I look like Robin Williams. I am the spitting image of Mr. Williams, but
and doing that Mrs. Doubtfire impression didn't help.
But he had that ability to go very dark, and did in films, and you think how could he do the Mrs. Doubtfire and the other thing, and it's the same thing. He had that extraordinarily malleable face, and he had the ability with voice, and I think we are divided twins somewhere. And my name was originally Williams. I was adopted as a child, and my birth name was Williams. So who knows?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, for me.
Right.
And my very strange birth mother, who had the most extraordinary maiden name. She could have come out of the pages of Charles Dickens or a rather odd magazine from the top shelf. She was called Cobbledick. You don't want to mispronounce that word.
Really? That was her last name? That was her last name,
yes.
So I guess perhaps it's good that you didn't end up with that as your name. It's bad enough that I grew up with Bell. My maiden name is Bell, like ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Lovely. That is lovely.
But I got teased so much by the other students, by the teachers. One of my favorite teachers in high school always called me Dingy. That was his nickname for me.
It's very cruel. It's very cruel.
It was fine. I liked him. So we all agree that lying on TV is fine, and it's been and Tim is slowly coming around on this, Lisa, because from the beginning he's still not sure that he could do it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Tim, but my understanding of your position now is you understand why people do this in the sense that it is effective on these kinds of shows. You're just not sure that you would do it personally because you just feel like you don't need the money badly enough to what?
Well, I don't think how much lying I would do. If I wasn't incredibly prepared and so practically scripted, I think I wouldn't get the money anyway. So I think it'd all be a bit of a waste of time. Anyway, I become friends with other members of the cast and want them to win, which is probably what happened in The Circle too.
That's kind of what happened to you too, Lisa, in a sense, right? People ended up aiding your game without meaning to. Do you think that happened? I don't have all of my notes in front of me, but I always feel like just being likable is very, very important in this game. And so, and everything being equal, right? Do you want to vote Lisa off, or do you want to vote off somebody else? right? Rich has the opposite problem, right?
Yeah.
Which is that he's doing everything he can to alienate his cast.
Yeah.
What?
And yes, he gets away with it in this episode, but just generally not a great idea.
I don't think he wants. I don't think. It's complicated. It's complicated.
So, what do you think? Let's psychoanalyze Richard Hatch for me, Lisa, because nobody after 20 years, we still don't really know what makes this guy tick.
Well, I don't know. I don't. I certainly don't know. But what I do know is, I think it's a. So you know how people, I can't remember what it's called. It's sort of like, retconning things where you do something and maybe it's a mistake, but then you're like, oh, well, actually, it was really good I did that because, and you sort of make up an excuse later.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think with Richard, perhaps some of his sort of more like abrasive things that he says and does, he can say, well, I was sort of trying, that was all strategic, and I'm not sure. There was a lot of it, a lot of things like that happened on the show. A lot of things where, it didn't seem like very good gameplay for him to be so abrasive or whatever,
right.
however you're going to describe it.
He gets all that out of the way in this episode, doesn't he? So maybe he's now set himself up for a running streak after this. But I've always said the nakedness was for shock value, and it was rather nice to hear Colleen.
We're gonna Tim. We're gonna get there. One sec.
I've got a little note down here. Colleen's crack. I don't know what that. Oh, I don't know.
She was speaking about his crack, but I just want to take.
Sorry, there's one more thing I want to say on the Rich thing though. I do know how frustrating it is when you do have a really carefully crafted game and you do all these meta things to get people to, challenge people's perception of you and change things, to then hear people saying, oh, and that wasn't on purpose. That person, did this badly or did this badly. And I know Richard Hatch is a really good Survivor player. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all if every single thing he did was very calculated.
Oh, I
just have a suspicion it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, he seems to me to be diametrically opposite to me. I come out of a room and I think, oh, I wish I'd said that, or oh my goodness, did I say how dreadful I said that, or I couldn't find the mot juste, the l'esprit d'escalier was invented for me. And I come out of a room and I could write a book about the things I ought to have said.
Yeah.
Ought to have done. And as Oscar Wilde would say, if I ever report what I did in the room, I will put all that stuff in it. But but myself, I live with a permanent state of regret. And I think Rich doesn't. I think Rich is one of those fortunate people who has a sort of the luck of God around him, and in of course the most benignly atheist way that I think he would approve of. But I think he's just extraordinarily lucky and fortunate, and he says all the right things or does all the right things for the moment.
Right.
I think he
does say things.
He has the Midas touch. He has the Midas touch. I don't know how he does it.
Well, and I feel like that's how he survived this. And there's specific reasons why he didn't go home. But I do, like, on the one hand, like Lisa, you're right. Obviously, he's one of the greats. On the other, I do wonder whether some of these things maybe should have been said privately to a camera and not in front of his cast members.
Yeah.
He does seem to have alienated pretty much everybody. Sean.
Even Rudy is alienated by this. Yeah.
Yes, well, but even Sean again, who we love Sean. Sean is a wonderful character, but not necessarily the person we look for strategic advice. And he says, wait, the only thing Rich ever does around camp is fish. Right. And then we have, and the fish comes up again because we have always thought that that he fishes basically to ingratiate himself with the tribe. And in this point, he tells us that's not the case. He says they're not voting me off because of the fish. They're not voting me off because I'm smart and I won't let them. And meaning he's saying that there's strategic reasons and not just food reasons. But I also would think that generally feeding the tribe would be a good strategy. And the fact that he's disavowing it makes me think again that maybe he's not quite as brilliant as we thought that he might be, or just human, or more human, right? He just made a mistake.
But by this point, Karen,
yeah,
he's realized other people can fish as well. So he's got to have another trick.
Right. Well, and that also does come in, right? The women do finally get a fish in the trap, right? Right. And then Rich again yells at Rudy because the way that the fish is being prepared, and he has this idea that again, Tim, will you defend this statement? He decides to take a break from fishing to make people appreciate it. Again, what do you think, Lisa? Good or bad Survivor gameplay?
I think it's a very human. It's one of the most human things you see happen. One of the most human things you see Rich do. Right. Yeah.
It's nice to see that our mastermind can make mistakes. So anything else on this before we get to the reward challenge? I mean, there's so many great quotes in this, that some of it become iconic quotes. But the big
question I want to ask.
Yes.
What's the joke about Colleen saying that Richard was interested in liposuction?
Oh, because he has a lot of. Well, I think she might have been also referring to fat. But Rich had there was a shot that we see of him kind of taking his skin and moving it up and down. He lost 30 pounds on the island, but beyond that, he lost about 100 pounds before he went on the island.
Yeah.
Right. So he had a lot of loose skin.
Right.
So that might be what she was referring to.
It's a very, very, very cruel comment, I must say.
Oh, yeah. But on the other hand, I guess he's made enough cruel comments that, and again, she said that, I believe, in confessional, right? She said that to the camera. She didn't say it to his face. And that's my point.
Not to look screened.
Right. You could be completely honest with the camera.
You can't. Right? Be careful what you say. Completely honest. I just find
you're both shaking your heads at me.
There's elements of honesty which if somebody, your mother comes up to you and says, does my bum look big in this dress? You say no. And find some way of changing the dress. Oh, sorry.
And I would argue, when there's $1 million at stake,
Oh, I think this $1 million is overrated. Say I not having it.
This is what we're dealing with, Lisa. He's gone from being completely against lying to he understands that it is effective in the game, but he just doesn't seem to be motivated by money. And so again, but the question is, would you do this then, Tim, just for the love of the game? Because there has been a Survivor player once who actually tried to buy the title, right? He didn't even care about the money. He came in second, and he said, I don't really care so much about the money. I'll actually pay you. I just want to be known as the winner.
Oh, I think the
woman obviously said no. Right.
That appeals to me a great deal, actually.
We'll get there. That's season 19. So in a few years we'll get there.
Yeah.
So we get to the report. Yeah. Sorry.
Just the thing about Colleen saying that about Rich and liposuction, it just, for me, it sort of comes in the category of unnecessary meanness.
Exactly. Lisa, can we not do a game together? I'll take you out.
We should get you on sequester. What do you think?
I don't know.
And then you can
I'm absolutely in. I'm absolutely in for it. If Lisa
you just gave me an idea for an off-season podcast.
Right.
Where we should introduce Tim to Sequester. Sequester is an online game, Tim, where you play from home on your computer. It's not dissimilar from the Circle in that sense, but you play as yourself. Well, again, there are seasons that are actually shot over 5 days, but then there are also what they call minis, which is what's happening now, obviously, with the shutdown, where people do this all in a 5 or 6 hour period. So I don't want to spend too much time on it now, because again, most of our listeners have not checked, but please consider checking out Sequester.
Yeah, check it out.
And we should and there's been some discussion about doing some off-season podcasts around the Survivor seasons. So we should do it, guys, on Sequester.
Is Sequester very cheap to do?
extremely, as well, especially the version where you're where you're working, doing it from home.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. It's like, and there's a professional sequester, which is screened in American TV.
No, it's a thing that someone who was on Big Brother in America sort of made up. So it's online only.
Right. Again, Tim, we're going to pin in this. We're going to put in a pin now and keep going. No, but Lisa, you have just invited yourself onto another podcast where we will talk all things sequester with Tim. No, maybe. All right.
I'm so unqualified for that, but I would be down.
No, we'll get other people.
I just need to be educated.
Yes.
I remember meeting a wonderful Japanese girl. I think she was my student at one point, and she said to me, I said, how do you what do you like? I think I must have been teaching her English. I must have ended up with this question. What do you like doing as a hobby? I hate the question. And she said, oh, I collect ephemera. And I thought, ephemera? I'm sure I know what this word means. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make any sense. And what she meant was she collected postcards and bits and pieces and letters and advertising. I just thought, what a wonderful thing to do. And I realized I also collect ephemera. And but I'm particularly keen on the ephemera, sort of the vocal ephemera, sort of the nonsense people say, and and I think our lives are dominated by meaningless comments and meaningless things. And I think TV also manifests. You must know this from your librarian background. The majority of our books and the majority of our bookcases are filled with rubbish, but it doesn't make that useless. It makes it that's central to our lives, and so often we dismiss things. I mean, I refuse to throw things out. My partner is sort of a malicious thrower out there. And I think, where did I? There was a piece of paper on my desk. Where has it gone to? What was on it? I don't know. If I knew what was on the piece of paper,
would it need the piece of paper? Yeah.
But there was a piece of paper there, and of course he has no idea what it was or where it's gone to, and then it's lost forever. And and because I have a sort of visual mind, I tend not to remember things. I tend to remember where things are, and I remember learning. I remember when I was doing my finals at university, and I had to do a paper on the Psalms, and I'd read 2 volumes of this wonderful German book by a man called Mowinckel, and I literally could remember every single psalm by number.
Wow, you're way ahead of me.
In English and Hebrew, and I was terribly excited, but I could remember it because I could remember which page it was, and which side of the page, and where on the page. I have that memory. But I couldn't possibly tell you anything about them.
Well, have you ever seen the 5-Minute University from Saturday Night Live? Is this okay? I'm hoping that I have some listeners who are old enough to remember this, but it's a classic Saturday Night Live skit. You both know what Saturday Night Live is, I hope.
I do, but I've not seen very much.
Okay, so it's a sketch comedy show.
Don't have it in New Zealand. We've never had it in New Zealand, but I saw it on the internet.
It is a sketch comedy show. So there was a character named Father Guido Sarducci, supposed to be a Catholic priest. And one of the bits he did was the 5-Minute University, right? That I will teach you in 5 minutes everything that you are going to remember 10 years after you've left university.
Yes.
So like I ask you, ¿Cómo está usted? Right? And your answer is muy bien, right? I ask you, how are you? You say fine. Because 5 or 10 years out of university, that's how much Spanish you're going to remember.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's true.
So, absolutely. Yeah. No.
I remember.
That was the other thing I also should have mentioned while I was, coming out on my disability. I have the memory of a goldfish.
No.
I am the worst at Survivor trivia. People are always so pleased when they beat me. And I'm like, if I haven't seen the season in the last few months, I don't remember any of the details. I remember who won. I remember the big moments, but some people just know all of this stuff.
But Karen, I can watch a TV program. The other day, I gamely watched this thing with Woody on it called Gogglebox, and I realized as I finished that I'd watched it the week before. It didn't make much of an impression the week before, and I didn't like it.
Apparently, if you didn't even remember it enough that you watched
No,
it again.
but the second time I saw it, I realized why I didn't like it, because it had these horrible moments in it. I think they decided that that in order to get a reaction, particularly from this wonderful lady who's the mother of Millie Fox, they wanted to show horrible things like snakes eating little reptiles, or a person pulling his arm off or sawing his arm off. And I just thought, oh, it's just nasty. And somehow I watched it. I watched this twice because I sort of removed it from my mind first time round. Or maybe I went to sleep. I don't remember. But,
that happens to me because I often fall asleep listening to a YouTube or listening to a podcast, and then I wake up and I have to figure out at what point I fell asleep. And sometimes
you never sent yourself to sleep, did you?
No, that's your trick, Tim.
I've done that. It's so, and I realize it's not. I always cite one particular moment, but I realize I've done it rather a lot. And we just thank God that I'm not nodding off at this moment.
Well, I guess that means that we are keeping you amused.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm bewitched.
So let's talk more.
Lisa, what would you be doing normally at this time? Because at this moment now, it's incredibly early in New Zealand.
Yes, I should have said something about this. So the reason we started 1 hour later is because Lisa very reasonably didn't want to start at 6 a.m. her time, but thought that 7 a.m. was perfect. I am not a morning person. My brain does not work before noon. Yeah, so yes, one person here from the UK, one person from New Zealand, and one person in the US. So it's a little tricky to find a time slot that works for everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad we did. So it's like 8:15 here now. I'd be sort of, I don't know, getting up, getting ready for work, stuff like that, getting my son ready.
And you work for charity now. You're doing charitable work.
Yeah. I work for a charity that specializes in helping people aged over 65 and people with disabilities to stay living in their communities. So, we're an information center as well. So that's a lot of what I do, research for people who ring up and need help navigating things online or can't work out what government department does what, and they get referred.
Perfect job for a librarian, though. I mean, that's such a great jump from what you were doing to I feel like the research skills are probably very similar.
Yeah, and the customer service skills, like relating to a wide variety of people. It's a real privilege. And sometimes you call up people to ask them about some technical thing or whatever, and you can just tell they've got so much inside them, just like waiting to express to someone, and they'll just start talking, and it'll turn into a 20-minute phone call of them just sort of expressing what's going on with their life and me empathizing. And it's really precious. A lot of precious connections are happening in this job. I really like it.
Yeah, well, like I said, as somebody with actually several disabilities, I'm very much in favor. But we got to talk about this episode.
Are you scribblers, by the way? Do you have these little books?
Which little books?
Well, I got introduced to these moleskin things about 5 or 6 years ago, and now I've got about 40. I got a whole shelf of them, and they barely last me a month now. I write everything in them because I think I do it in order. I don't do it in topic. And here is my life.
Interesting.
I find it very useful. And sometimes when I ring up people, and you suddenly find you're on the end of a phone of somebody who just it's like a I was going to say like an expectorant. It's a vomit of it's a vomit
catharsis?
of yeah, you just want to scribble it down. You want to, and I really regret it on those instances when I don't have when sometimes I have my book and I don't have my pencil.
Oh yeah,
I do the same thing with my phone, or in this case, because I have no memory at all. So my kids used to refer to my phone as my brain because I need this for work, for school tomorrow or whatever. Like I said, this is another one of the sequelae of the stroke. I'm just like, if you want me to remember it, bring me the phone. So the kids learned. They were quite small, and they would bring the phone to me and say, like, I need so and so for such and such for work tomorrow or school tomorrow, right? Because they just knew that if I don't immediately write it down, it does not move from short-term memory to long-term memory. Yes, so I'm waiting. But again, Tim, maybe we'll finally take you into the 20th century. So I've got this instead, tablet, same idea. And you don't run out of pages.
Well, the other day, I've been having so many problems with my internet provider, sort of organization called Still. Yeah, it's just catastrophic, and my partner's phone stopped working altogether, and they also provide the connection there. And so we thought it must be the phone which is the problem. So I rang them up and I tried to buy another phone, and I was credit checked twice, and I got through that point, and then both times. The person who was trying to deal with this sale hadn't stock checked and had to do it again. And I think, I'm going to be credit checked a third time, and then my credit will be out of the window.
I spent an entire day, meaning a 24-hour period, trying to deal with my broken phone. But again, Tim, my listeners are going to string me up if we don't talk about it.
I'm so sorry. Let's get back on to
We could just kind of have conversations with Tim, and we'll just talk about anything. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Well, so you know what? This is what tends to happen. We probably did it today kind of in the wrong order. We start with the episode, right? So that people don't get cranky. And then, people who are still around a couple of hours into this, then they're happy to hear whatever we're speaking about. But we've barely started the episode. So let's try.
We did a step and not very much happened. It was very riveting while it was happening.
But the reward challenge. Okay, so reward challenge. We don't discuss the challenge. The thing that's important is, so Colleen wins. They do have so we now have letters from home, along with the videos from home, and they made a big point that yes, Jenna, look, you're here, and it's
Would you be able to do the tightrope walking thing?
You could do that. You'd be fine.
Yeah. Although at the end of it, like at the end of, there was a few balance things at the end of my season, and I was like, fantastic, this is my time to shine. Whoa, all the lack of food and stuff, it was not my time to shine. I was just stumbling around. So yeah, I don't know.
I think I would have been rather scared, actually.
But so the important thing is Colleen wins, and then Jeff says, you can pick one more person, and this is why we spoke about this last week. The whole thing about winning the family, any kind of family reward challenge. Generally, I would say you don't want to do it because you have to pick one person and alienate everybody else. But in this case, Colleen instantly picks Jenna, and nobody's going to have a problem with that.
No, right? I mean that was
That was easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Generally, though, but you can imagine, though, Tim, if that wasn't the case, right, and everybody was on an even playing field, and Colleen has to choose who's going to get their letter, it can be very dicey, right? But she picks Jenna, everybody's happy, and then they go out for their barbecue lunch, and the barbecue alliance is
barbecue alliance,
right? Where they Pagong finally starts to wake up. And they say, we don't want these people to win. And so they realize, so at this point we have 8 people left. And again, this is a case of too little, too late. Although it very easily could have gone another way, right? Because we've got the Tagi 4, which as far as anybody knows, it's still the Tagi 4. So it's Rudy, Rich, Kelly, and Sue. And then you've got Colleen, Jenna, Jervis, and Sean. So they can't win, right? But they could certainly tie things up. And so there was some discussion about, maybe we can bring in Jervis, maybe we can bring in Sean.
And Kelly.
Right? And question mark Kelly, right? Because, so again, put a pin in that. We'll see how everybody votes at the end. But we do get to see that it was way too little, way too late. If they had woken up a couple of episodes earlier, things would have been very different. Right, but like we had Jervis was the last episode. The episode was saying, if they do it one more time, right, then we'll know that you keep getting every episode. There's 4 people voting together. How many times does it take before you believe that 4 people are voting together, right? Yeah. But
I felt so frustrated watching that, even back in 2000 or 2001, whenever it was. I was just like, especially, I remember I was like, well, we'll just wait and see. I was like, no, don't wait and see. It's so obvious, dude.
Lisa, I was on the edge of my seat today. Watching this. I was really sort of, whereas previous episodes, certainly recently, the last few weeks, I've not been that bothered by the time I got halfway through. And I've had to sort of force myself. But this one, I was genuinely anxious to see how it was going to turn out. I thought I knew how it would turn out. I was right, but I doubted myself because it was so actually it was so well set up, and there were so many stories which I think production could have followed. And one of them, I mean, there were sort of hints of it, and I think this went through a few re-edits actually. Rudy's line about lesbianism is shocking, and then he followed it up by making this line about not got enough brains, which is deeply, deeply shocking, and I don't think would even get aired today.
Right.
But
right.
But
in terms of the lesbianism, the comment, whatever, the fact that he talks about this so much, right? I always wonder about when you are so against, gay people, and it's something that's constantly on your mind. That can be a sign of certain things, right? Because if you have your own sexuality, what other people are doing shouldn't bother you that much.
Yeah.
Right. No. This was 20 years ago, and even the fact that there was an openly gay man on television was a big deal.
With whom he was great friends. I mean, it's all screaming, really. But but I think there was an alternative edit here, and this is a remnant from that alternative edit. And I think the alternative edit was really what I think would be produced today, which is girl power. This is the episode where if I were the editor and the producer, I would not be going on a sort of rich bitch session where half the program is taken up with bitching about rich. I wouldn't be interested in that. I would be going on girl power, and I'd be going on sort of how do these girls get together, possibly to threaten Rich.
Right. And we've seen that. I mean, even back from the beginning when Stacey was trying to get something going against Rich.
This is so much more of a dominant thread in the narrative. And in fact, in this episode, the way it's edited, it becomes sort of a footnote. And the impression we get is that Richard is hated by everybody. And that's not the case. What is the better narrative is that there's an attempt to oust him from his position of security. And why? Because the girls have actually been fishing. The girls have got the fish. The girls are getting an alliance. The girls are developing credibility in their own right and cutting across the former tribe.
But again, this would be a better narrative if it weren't too late.
Yeah,
because because the best they can do is tie the vote.
Yeah, I would love to re-edit this episode completely. I just think it's I think it was very watchable, but it's a complete mess editorially and in terms of production.
Right,
and it's quite cruel in places. There's up to this point, there's not been points where I felt people were cruel. I thought I do feel like you do have to make a distinction between the things that people saying to each other's face and what they're saying in confessional. No, I really
no.
Okay,
tell me when cruel or they are not cruel, and I don't want to see people being cruel. And in this particular episode, I saw it on two occasions, and two people who I sort of like. I was warming to Colleen, and what she said about Rich was horrible. And I already liked Rudy, and what he said about the girls was horrible. And it's turned me off both of them, actually.
No, look, obviously what you say to the camera is you, right? And you still have to own it. But, and you're right, and this level of cruelty, look, it doesn't come up that often in Survivor, although again, but your barometer for cruelty is obviously very different from mine.
Seems like it.
Yeah. But this whole thing with Rich's birthday, the whole thing with the nudity, right? Which we've talked about this a little bit before. It's his birthday, so he's going to celebrate in his birthday suit, and it really was kind of perfect that they were going to get. I think it was Jenna said we're going to give him a birthday gift by voting him out in his birthday suit. Now, the one thing I do have to tell you is that according to rumor and innuendo. Right. I don't know whether this is true, but there are several sources that say that Rich was not the only one who was naked on the island. And that, in fact, even a few days before this, Rich was naked together with people, including Colleen, right? And Rudy, and I think it was Jervis, right? So if that is true, then what Colleen said about Rich's, well, and also the fact that she's body shaming, but she's not really body shaming him. Again, the liposuction comment is body shaming. Not wanting to see him naked, it's not necessarily body shaming. But in any case, I just feel like we have to keep that in mind.
No. It makes no sense. It seems to me the whole thing about celebrating your 39th birthday by being in your birthday suit only works if you haven't been in your birthday suit up to that point.
Fair enough. Yeah.
This is
no, he wanted to spend the plan had been to spend the entire day. He was going to spend the entire day in his birthday suit, including the challenge, and I think even possibly tribal. But he did start to realize that, but at some point, like about the middle of the day, and this I think was in Burnett's book, one of the things that I read, that he realized that Colleen and Jenna were not comfortable. And so about midday, he put his clothing back on.
I fail to see why they would be uncomfortable today and they weren't uncomfortable the other day.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If that is true, then it does certainly question. Also, the fact that Rich, kind of the way that Rich refuses to care about what other people think, it's a good idea in life. Again, I'm not sure it's such a great idea on a reality show. If you're new, what do you think, Lisa?
I'm not even sure if it's a good idea in life. I think that because not like, you obviously don't want to get hung up on what people really think about you and change your behavior, but I think you always want to have win-win scenarios. And so you want to be trying to meet your needs. So you want to have fun, or you want to be naked, or you want to feel free. But there's other people in the world, and you want to hold their needs with care.
And I think there are more important things than having fun. I think having an effect on the world in a more focused way, that is of more importance than having fun.
Oh, so that's a bit of a violent viewpoint there. Like, it's like ranking needs or ranking, what's meaningful and what's not. I think that it's sort of up to individuals to, decide what they really value.
Yeah, I agree. I can really only speak for myself, but I was always appalled by Mill and Bentham's sort of happiness scale. I was thinking, well, sort of meaningfulness seems to me to be more valuable than happiness. But equally, other people's happiness seems to be. My happiness is predicated on other people's happiness. So if I'm thinking of anybody's happiness, it must be other people's happiness first. If other people are not happy, how can I possibly be happy?
Mm-hmm. I think what I was just saying, and again, and maybe I have a different perspective here as an older woman, because I do think it is very much true. It's and I wish I'd known who said this, but it's one of these aphorisms that when you're 20 years old, you care very much what people think of you. And when you're 40, you don't really care what they think of you. And when you're 60, you realize they were never thinking about you in the first place. Right? So I do feel like a lot of people, and maybe especially women, tend to spend way too much of their time when they are younger, right? Just trying to do, like you said, to fit in. Everybody needs to fit in. But one of the things that, again, as I'm getting older as a woman, you do kind of let this go. You just start to care less about what people think of you. Because the fact that I'm doing a podcast, given all of my issues, I just had decided, screw it. Johnny wants me to do it, and I'm going to do it. I don't know that 10 or 20 years ago, I don't think I could have possibly made that decision. Mm-hmm. So, I think you said this, Lisa, it's a balance, right? Of course, you want to care about others, right? But I'm saying there's also a healthy amount of self-confidence that I think you do need to win one of these games.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
You need to really,
like I said,
yourself.
You got to read the room. If everybody there is really fine with him being naked, then be naked.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, is there hypocrisy going on if some of them were also naked?
Or do you think this was part of the production aim to make Richard look like he was about to go out when actually it was somebody else? Well,
in terms of how they edited it, maybe. But what do you mean? Of course, it's. Yeah, the reason they edited it the way they did was because everybody is slowly coming, and I say everybody, I mean people who were watching the show at the time, are slowly coming around to the idea that maybe the Tagi 4, it's going to be a problem, right? Like you said, because Colleen and Jenna woke up too late. So how do we prevent? And Tim, like I said, I'm going to teach you a new word, right? On Survivor, when we talk about a Pagonging, right? This is the term that we use to this day, right? When one tribe, it's often like you're at the merge, and one tribe has 8 people and one tribe has 4, or something of that nature. And it's like, oh, is this going to be a Pagonging? Right? A Pagonging is when you just vote off the other tribe that has fewer numbers. And it makes some very boring television, right? And so in this case, yes, I do think these things happened. I do think he decided to be naked on his birthday, all of that. What were you saying, Tim?
Well, first of all, I think I think the last few episodes have been slightly boring. Mm-hmm. This episode I felt was so far from boring as, I was really very excited, but I also felt that this was probably the most manipulative episode in terms of production that I have yet seen. I just saw the stamp of a producer all the way through it. And I was very interested when we started off, Lisa, and you said, I think you did say production didn't do very much in this episode, or there wasn't very much.
In terms of clear interference, I saw less than I saw in other episodes, but what were you referring to, Tim?
Well, I'm referring particularly to Colleen's comments, to Kelly's comments about Richard. I just think all these things were really in a sort of confessional situation, and I was thinking, what questions would I ask somebody to get those responses? Ooh, yes. Are you sure you like Richard being naked all the time? Yes, I don't mind.
Oh, of course, sure? Right.
Well, I'd be happy if I didn't have to look at his bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Click, and then and I just felt all of these comments were loaded and were responses.
Yes.
And also, I think this idea, oh, Richard, we haven't seen you naked for a day or two. Have you given that up? Isn't it your birthday tomorrow? Wouldn't you like to celebrate in your birthday suit?
Yeah.
I hear you, but I don't know that Rich needs that much direction from that standpoint.
He may not need that much direction, but I'm sure as hell that he got it.
I'm sure he got it. Yeah.
Sorry, Lisa, I'm being very naughty, aren't I?
No, I hear what you're saying.
No, I testify. That is true.
This is literally smeared in blood with production, and I think there's enough in this episode on its own to have gone with a completely different edit and a completely different production thing, and it would have been a better episode. As I say, girl power is what's already in this episode, and a little bit of if I were to look at the rushes for these 3 days, I could produce a much better episode, frankly. And I wouldn't need to make Richard into sort of pretend villain to get some energy out of the episode. I think what was happening here is they thought after day 1, this has not got very much energy, because the entire episode is devoted to day 3. The entire episode is devoted to Richard's birthday.
Well, I don't think...
On which day was the tribal gathering? The first 2 days are irrelevant, and that has not happened so far.
Right, but they didn't have 2 challenges. They couldn't have had 2 challenges and a tribal in one day. That's the
the challenges are unimportant in this episode. The challenges just happen.
Right.
Think about it. The actual episode is all about anti-Rich, so that we can surprise the audience with getting rid of Jenna. And actually, there's a much better story.
Right, but again, I think they did this in a vain attempt to try to pull people off of this belief that there's no way that
there was going to be a Pagonging.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
But in the process, they betrayed themselves by getting people to say these really horribly provocative and unpleasant things, and they alienate me actually in doing so, because I don't want Colleen to win now, and I don't particularly want Rudy to win, and I did want Rudy to win, and I was quite warming to Colleen, and I don't anymore.
Well, as you said, I don't think we really need to watch the challenges that much. It was interesting though with that strategy game. Do I get to the immunity challenge?
Oh, I loved it.
They finally have a mental challenge, and again, Survivor does have this, and they should have more of them. But, but I felt that this was great because it's very low budget, etc. But it makes for good television, and like you said, it allows somebody like Rudy to win who might not win some of these very physical challenges.
Oh, it was wonderful. I was on the edge of my seat with that. I was really excited. I was bored out of my mind with the with the rope dance stuff.
Again, partly because you can't
cool.
really see it, right?
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
in future seasons, when they get better at filming this and better doing the Jeff Probst is narrating over the challenge, some of which may be added later, but they tell us what we're seeing. Whereas in this season, again, it was just too hard to follow. All we really know is that they were all trying really hard and Colleen won.
No, I like the bit where I think Jenna and Gervais went over each other.
Oh yeah, I mean it had its moments, but you couldn't really watch it and understand who was in whatever. I felt like it didn't make it nearly.
I would be interested to know whether Jenna and Gervais did that over and under thing a few times for the camera.
See,
yeah, I'm sure they would have done pickups on it. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, if you are more. Now, I want to say negative's not the right word, but more, you are less trusting of production than Johnny Fairplay is, then you are really in a very, very high level of, because like I said, you're seeing, I mean, there's certainly production interference on Survivor, but I do think that sometimes you look for interference where maybe it didn't happen. Did they do some pickups? Possibly. I don't know.
I see production as being the experts on this, and I expect them to do the expert thing. But equally, I see them as being in charge. And here, they're more in charge than they needed to be. There was a simpler route. And to me, it just seems written sort of in bold letters in sort of every 15 minutes through the show. And brilliant television. But there could have been there was a better and a truer edit.
Well, and also less negative, which is something that you would prefer.
Yeah,
I understand, but it is also so interesting in terms of just what is considered to be acceptable or not even controversial, right? I don't think that any of these comments that were made on in this episode would have really gotten much notice 20 years ago. I do feel like people are more careful.
Be proud of these comments watching them back.
Back now, 20 years later, I'm sure they're not.
Would they have been proud watching these comments, watching themselves saying these things? Or would they think, oh my God, I was goaded into saying that?
All I can tell you is most of these people did come back to play Survivor again, right? So even after seeing what production did, they could. I don't think they were too upset. Again, we've told right.
That goes back to why people go on Survivor. How people are willing to be treated to either win the money or to get famous or to get accepted by people, or it goes back to the needs they're trying to meet. And so I don't really think people going back to play Survivor has much to do with how production treated them. I think it has a lot more to do with what they're trying to get out of it personally. Yeah. So that would be a point in the pro column for me.
When you go back for a second time, you already know what you're going to. You already pretty well know what you're going to get, and therefore you think you've got an advantage. But all
right.
I still think it's a Faustian pact. I still think.
Of course, it always is.
And the dice are loaded.
And I think your problem, Tim, is that again that you didn't fully understand that because you haven't seen a lot of reality TV.
Yes,
it's always that bargain. That bargain always exists.
Yeah.
Just to go back to something you were saying, Karen, about how these comments were seen at the time. When I watched this live, it was in New Zealand, so it was probably a few weeks later. The stuff that Rudy was saying, especially, I was just like, whoa, how is this being said? Like, why are they screening this? This is not cool. Like, I never liked Rudy just for that reason. So
you already thought it was slightly sort of.
Yeah, just not on. Not cool.
I guess Rudy has said so many of these things that, again, I'm kind of immune to it, but I shouldn't be. But again, for him, the only thing I will say in Rudy's defense, and it's not a defense, I'm not saying this is okay.
Yeah, of course.
But this is probably the first gay person he's ever spoken to, and he still likes Rich, despite all of this, but he still keeps making these comments. And sometimes he does say they do seem to be for his army buddies, right? So that when they watch this, they're already going to give him a good hard time, right? For being friends with Rich. But at least if he makes some bigoted comments along the way, he feels like that's the way he can have it both ways.
Yeah. I mean, he's trying to get acceptance there as well. He doesn't want to go on the show and then lose, his 50 years of relationships he's got outside of it. So he's trying to preserve, he's trying to, do both things.
The thing he just comes across. He comes across as such a nice man, and then he says these ghastly things.
But again, Tim,
why has somebody not taken him to one side and said, "You are coming across as such a nice man"? Instead, they're goading him to be as nasty as they possibly can. I think that's such unpleasant television, actually.
Yeah. All right, understood. So before we get to tribal council, anything else? So even just shortly before tribal council, we'll talk about the conversation with Kelly and various other things. But of the things we've talked about up until now, anything else that we should address? We are going on 3 hours here, so I'm having fun. But that's why I'm just trying to pull this along a little bit.
Sorry.
I'm Tim. I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to balance a whole bunch of things at once, trying to do this. So let's see. So
there is something else I would like to get to the bottom of, and I don't think we're going to ever get to the bottom of it without talking to Sean.
Which I am trying to make happen. I should tell people. Sean is on Twitter. Okay. And Sean has a YouTube channel, which last I checked, he has 8 subscribers, or maybe he had 8 subscribers before I subscribed.
Oh, right.
He seems to be very much Sean. He says he's still a neurologist. He's making these, humorous videos on YouTube. And so I reached out and I just sent him, the logo of the podcast as Survivor NSFW Rewind. And I said, "See, Sean, we haven't forgotten about you." And he liked that.
Oh,
he doesn't have direct messages, so I couldn't try that. So I tweeted at him and said, the fans would really love to hear from you, know what you've been up to, and nothing.
Well,
but I tried. I know that I'm trying to get close. And Tim and I
so much to some of the people here. No matter what he does to alienate me, I warm enormously to Richard. I warmed to Greg, and I thought Greg had the moment in the show today, by the way, of everybody in the show. Greg sitting on his own as jury was just so poignant. And
we're gonna get there when we're gonna talk tribal council. So anything else before we get to the council?
I'm so sorry, but it's these moments of tenderness and. We used the word before. I used the word before. It begins with a V anyway. Vulnerability. These are the things to me which make great television. And Sean has it. Sean has it without really making very much effort. He just looks like a little boy lost sometimes. And he did when he was trying to defend his alphabet thing.
Again, we're gonna get to tribal in just a second. Lisa, was there something else you wanted to say?
I just wanted to say that for me, one thing I always remember about this episode is when Jenna and Colleen are eating the food and they're like, "Oh, we could do this a lot. Yeah, let's do it. Woo!" And just even as they're saying that and making those plans, I'm thinking, "Oh no, this is doomed. This is doomed." But I love their excitement and happiness in that moment. It's sort of like the realization, like they're like, "Ah, it's all clear now. I see what I need to do." And there's just the tragedy that it's just happened like 1 or 2 steps too late.
Well, but still, they could have tied it up, right? So let's get into tribal council. But just before we get to tribal council, again, we talked about this. So Kelly again is questioning her loyalty, right?
Oh, Kelly's not about Richard.
We have to talk about that, right? Sue and Rich are very nervous, and they notice that Kelly is dressing. I think it was Rich. Was Rich that said, Kelly is dressing like the other young girls, which is definitely
anthropological.
We certainly see this on Big Brother. I'm not sure how much we see it on Survivor because you don't necessarily have much clothing to speak of, but it's definitely the kind of thing you want to look for. He's right about that. When they're all wearing the same hairstyle, that is a sign that maybe they need to keep a little bit more of an eye on her. And then we have Rudy makes another bigoted comment, and then
there was also the dismissive comment about 3rd grade, and I'm never quite sure what 3rd grade is. Because even here in the UK, education terms keep changing, and I'm stuck on something which is
so 3rd grade in the US is like 8 to 9 years old.
All right. So they were actually saying that these girls are behaving like they were 8 to 9 years old.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's dismissive.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And slightly sexist as well. And I
Well,
don't
Rich
remember.
just has this idea that he is so much smarter than everybody else on the island put together, and he's not very good at hiding it.
Yeah.
So they get, but then Jervis does make this comment also that right before they go to tribal, he says, let's get rid of Rich and we can all starve together. Right. So they really do try to set it up as if we are finally going to see the downfall of Richard Hatch.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen. So like I said, first of all, they come into tribal. And first of all, like I said, Rich is wearing clothing because he has given up on the whole idea of it being.
He's wearing quite a lot of clothing, more than usual.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Sean defends the alphabet strategy. And this is the first time I believe that Sean is open about what he's doing, right? He's told us in the past that he's going to vote according to the alphabet. But now he's starting to tell the rest of the cast. And so, of course, what this does, poor Sean, who is a neurosurgeon, I still can't wrap my head around this. He's a neurosurgeon. He's still a neurosurgeon as far as I can tell. But he can't figure out that by announcing his vote in advance, right, it allows Tagi to take advantage of it. So when he says, you know, oh, I'm going to vote for Jenna because she's the next one up, but, you know, I think, but she's safe. I don't have to worry about this. I don't know who he thought was going to go home, right? And I don't know who Tagi would have sent home, right? I mean, there are arguments for all of them, right? I don't know that Jenna would have been the next one out. But when he announces, hey, I'm voting for Jenna, right? So what happens? The rest of the Tagi, what's left of the Tagi 4, which is now starting to look like maybe it's the Tagi 3, right? We're not quite sure what's going to happen with this. But so what ends up happening in the end is that, so what are the votes for Jenna? It's Rich, Rudy, Sue, and Sean, right? And then for Rich, we have the 3 votes for Rich. We have Colleen, Jervis, and Jenna. And then Sean, and then Kelly votes for Sean. And so I understand why she did it, right? Because she didn't want to vote against the alliance, but she also didn't want to vote with the alliance. What do you think, Lisa?
It's a throwaway vote. Like, she felt scared about staying in the game if she voted against, you know, if the plan didn't work, and she felt scared about the social repercussions if she voted the other way.
Right. Would she not think Jenna would vote for Sean?
Sorry, say it again, please.
Would she not think that Jenna would vote for Sean? Jenna knows Sean is voting for her. Mm-hmm. So the natural thing would be to assume, Jenna is going to vote for Sean. If I vote for Sean, that's 2 votes for Sean.
Yeah, but you would think that I wouldn't do something like that without talking. I mean, there's a difference between knowing or having a discussion with somebody and having some reason to think that they might be voting for Sean.
In the circle, we were told we were not allowed to discuss our votes with anybody else, either before or after.
Well, that's very different from Survivor.
Which seems to me to be a very practically useful process, because it takes this sort of plotting away. It means it's all happening inside your head.
It's a different game.
There's more paranoia. But I find it extraordinary that if you're actually discussing this, you're then looking at something slightly different. You're looking at who is lying and who is not lying.
But Tim, in the non-UK versions, they also do seem to they are allowed to speak about alliances.
In the circle.
But they are allowed to speak.
And indeed, in the UK version, though I didn't know about it, an alliance did actually form.
Yeah, there was an alliance against you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. In the circle, there was a lot of stuff about rules. And I remember the night before I went in, the person who was looking after me did say, we will go through the rules. She never did. So I went into the circle without the slightest idea what the rules were. And I had to sort of work it out as I went along. But I don't know whether other people were given the rules very clearly. I've never actually discussed it with anybody. And I thought it's just a game. I'm not so worried. I hardly know the rules of chess.
Interesting. But I just wanted to go through those both.
Just thinking about reasons why Kelly might vote for Sean. I mean, she's the next one on the block for Sean, isn't she? He's going to be voting for her next time if he sticks with his strategy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I always thought that was an element to it as well.
Yeah.
Maybe she sort of like wanted to just maybe was a bit hopeful that people would vote for Sean, knowing that she was going to be in the Jenna position next time, possibly.
Right.
Especially with this alienation between her and Susan and Rich.
Right. It's a reasonable idea. I do think, like you said, though, mostly it's a throwaway vote.
Or also, I think she could have noticed that other people were not that fond of Sean at that in these 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure at this point they're all getting on each other's nerves, and I'm not saying she didn't have good. Lisa, I think you're right that once she decide, okay, I'm going to basically throw away my vote, then it makes sense to vote for Sean. But I always just assumed that she didn't want to vote with the alliance and she didn't want to vote against the alliance, so she threw her vote away.
Yeah,
I just think it's extraordinary that people aren't voting against Jervis because
we keep talking about this. Tim doesn't see it, but he is charming and he's lazy and he's open about being lazy, and nobody seems to have any interest in getting rid of him.
Yeah, because he's not going to win, I think.
Well, you're seeing that's with the 2020 lens. You're right. You can look at this and say, I don't think he's going to win. But in 2000, Lisa, you looked at this and said, there's no way that Jervis can win.
Well, I don't remember, but I think Rich would have been looking at it like that.
Maybe. Well, yeah. I don't know that Rich thinks of anybody as being on his level. Maybe he has even more contempt for Jervis, but. I would
love to go head to head with Rich. I would love to find out how he thinks. I think he's a very nice man, and I think that bluster is there as a form of protection, as opposed to the other way around, where he's a nasty man and there's sort of niceness which you use as a shield. I think he's exactly the other way around. I think he's quintessentially nice, and that he masks it with a certain amount of sort of steeliness. And I've met so many people. I've met so many Riches in my life, and I like them. I like them enormously. I have great fondness for the Rich type, and I don't understand. Well, I do understand why he gets on in the group, because that's exactly what happens with the Rich type. People see this. They see the protective shield, and they also see very, very, very clearly the kindness and the sweetness inside.
He's a complicated character, which is what makes him such good TV. I've never seen him as, just the villain, right? Even for those, I'm not even sure. The only reason I would argue, sorry,
he's so far from a villain.
But he's the villain in the sense that, in the story, you need to have a villain. And so for storytelling purposes, he is our villain. That doesn't mean, same thing with Johnny, Tim. I say Johnny was a Survivor villain. It doesn't mean he's a bad person.
I could see Johnny playing the villain. I haven't seen his episodes, of course, but I've seen that little episode of him with the grandmother thing. But he's he knows how to push character, whereas Richard is a bit of an innocent. Within Richard, there's a sort of innocence, and I rather like that. And there's also innocence there in Greg, which I want. And I'm not surprised that Greg and Richard were drawn to each other at one point. And I don't think it was just simply an expedient opportunity for a fumble among the plants. It was.
It's interesting that you say this, Tim, because saying Greg is innocent, I think it's pretty easy to see where that comes from. But I don't know that the words hatch and innocence have ever been used in the same sentence before. I mean, what do you think?
Well, at some point, I hope we're going to meet Rich, and I would like to test this theory, because I think he's a sort of cutie, and I think he's got great charm, and I think that charm is not something which is projected onto him. I think it comes from within. I think he is that person, and I think the steeliness is the armor plating that he's developed. Whereas I think there are other people who have developed the charm as a sort of armor plating, and I run a mile from those people.
I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying. It's interesting.
That's my reading of him, and I enjoy reading.
Also, to be fair, so Tim has seen nothing beyond up to this point in.
Yeah.
Because he already knows, I told him that, basically almost everybody from after the merge, we will see Rich play again. And so we do have to keep everything that's happened in the last 20 years with Rich, and there has been a lot, right, can lead to a different impression, but
right.
the same person.
So you think I'm completely wrong, but
you're deeply wrong.
Please let me indulge my error.
No,
he's a very thoughtful person.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think if I just thought you were wrong, I would tell you that you were wrong, right? I'm a Survivor expert. You've never seen it before, blah, blah, blah. No, like I said, I'm quiet because I think you're on to something. Like I said, in the sense that he is a very complicated character. And like you said, the people you really have to watch out for.
I also think there's a lot of sensitivity in him, which he hides. He does his very best to hide it. Mm-hmm. Sensitivity, vulnerability, all that comes across. That's what makes him likable. And the same thing with Greg. And the same thing, really, which is emerging with Jenna. Mm-hmm. It took time to come out. Mm-hmm. It's been very, very well cast. Mm-hmm. Who were the characters in your series, Lisa?
Pardon me? Who were the
great characters other than you? Who were the great characters who were sort of stand out as incredibly well cast? Would you say, objectively?
It was just a great cast, like everyone. Like, I know that sounds like a real sitting on the fence response, but
no, I don't mind the fence.
There were a lot of big characters.
Yeah. There were some people had a bit more flair. so there was a sort of New Zealand archetypes.
Really?
Like the farmer or the stuff like that. But
have you kept in touch with everybody, or
not everyone, but a lot of the people, some of those relationships are really, really special to me. But it's difficult because so I'm in the South Island of New Zealand, so I'm really geographically distant from everyone else, pretty much. So
it's just funny because we think of it as such a small country, and it is in terms of population. But like I said, there's a large landmass. So I don't know New Zealand geography at all. But you're saying, like, you're on the South Island and most of your cast is on the North Island?
Yeah. Everyone apart from one person's on the North Island. And to get between them, you need to catch a 3-hour ferry or get a plane. It's just not easy to catch up with people like I'd like to be. But online during the lockdown and stuff, you could catch up with people virtually. But
right.
I don't know.
Right. So, but just before, anything else on this episode before I ask you other questions about New Zealand?
You need the cat.
Is anything? Yes. Well, Bay. The problem is, look, Bay. Is that Bay? I don't know if that's Bay or Hammond.
It's Bay.
Okay, well, Bay is on TV. That's the problem. Bay is very upset that we're not including him in the podcast.
Yeah, he's being very needy at the moment. Come on up here. Come on.
Yes, say hi to Bay. So then, Lisa. So
yes.
So I just have to ask, because you are in New Zealand. What's it like living in a country where coronavirus is no longer an issue? It's so like, is your life gone pretty much back to normal?
Yes, it's pretty sweet.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. So what happens now is anyone who comes into the country gets forced to go into a isolation facility.
Of course, right.
So we do have some cases of COVID, and but they're in these isolation facilities. One guy left the facility to go to the supermarket to buy something, and that caused a national scandal. The Minister of Health resigned after that happened.
But the point is that they caught him because
he went back. He went back. They don't think they caught him. Like, he wasn't trying to abscond. He was just trying to have a little bit of freedom.
Oh, but I'm saying, but they figured it out. What, based on his phone or something? They realized that he'd been out, or just because he got out?
I'm not sure. I think he might have just said. I think.
But this is the level of COVID problem that you have in New Zealand, and here we just don't know when of this is ever going to end.
Yeah, I feel really concerned for all the people I know in other countries.
Elections matter, people.
Or just subvert that system entirely. Maybe step outside the system. I don't think anyone needs anyone telling them what to do. Masters and slaves. That's not what I'm about.
Yes.
So,
understood. But it's interesting that you're saying this, Lisa, because you are benefiting from a situation where a lot of people were told what to do for a certain amount of time, and it worked.
Well, yeah, but was that the only way?
Yes.
The answer seems to be yes, because if you look at all these other countries that took, half measures, if you will. There were problems. Yeah, I mean,
the problem,
and it worked.
But you have to look at it within like the larger context. Like, so we're in this situation where for our whole lives we're sort of told to, cede to authority. People will tell us what to do, toe the line or else. There's sort of all these implicit threats everywhere. And so I don't think that breeds a climate where people are responsible for their own health or really maybe try and hold other people's needs with care, Yeah. So it's true that I'm definitely in a situation now where I am benefiting from being in a country where there's not really COVID because the government did these extreme measures. But what I would like is a situation where just the entire system is different, where people have their individual freedom and there's no sort of punishments, no one with a stick over you telling you what to do. And I think if that was the case, people would take more responsibility for that type of stuff.
I'll just tell you, living now in the U.S., unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case. Because basically what I said is you have to, right, so those of us who are worried about the virus are, doing things to protect ourselves. But there's a very, very significant number of people who still think it's a hoax.
I know. So I feel horrified about that.
So at the end, it is individual responsibility in a situation like this where you just have to protect yourself.
Yes, but there's a limited number of things you can do if the virus is literally around the corner. And what we've got in the UK is a situation where I think people have almost forgotten that this is about a virus, and they're thinking, oh, now finally the government is letting us out of lockdown.
Yeah,
that's not really the case.
It's not the point. Yeah,
right.
People have got it wrong, and then going wild because they're out of lockdown.
And then you're going to end up in the situation that we have now in the US.
Yeah. And actually, we just need to be careful. I mean, I personally, as somebody with a beard, masks are a misery.
I'm sure.
And I've gone through various options to try and find a mask that actually works. So beard and glasses, it's the worst of all possible combinations.
Yeah.
I should see what I can find out, Tim, because, in the Jewish community, parts of the Jewish community and in Israel also, where they were quite strict and maybe not strict enough and they're having problems also, but there were a lot of men with beards much longer than yours because, again, in the religion, a lot of men never trimmed their beards.
Absolutely.
So there were issues also when we had the Scud missile attacks, they had to come up with gas masks that would work with the beard. So if they have gas masks that work for these long beards, I'm sure they have masks that work too. I should see what I can find out for you.
Oh, please do. I'd be so pleased. But it's you just feel the whole thing is sort of pointless. But beard and glasses messed up so quickly. So you've got to make sure you've got the metal thing over your nose.
That's the issue, right? See, Lisa, we're learning all these things that you don't have to worry about now.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. We're still in the middle of this. I don't want to, nobody really knows what the right answer is, but I can certainly tell you that Americans are looking to New Zealand as a success story. And the US as a complete
success story.
Yeah, why not? We're pretty awesome.
And we start with your Prime Minister. I think, New Zealand leads the way in so many fields. It's a superb example.
And so, again, even those who may have wondered whether it was all necessary and all that, it's a good question, but certainly what we are doing is not working. That's all I can say.
Yeah. That's really true.
All right.
Absolutely.
So let's do the bookkeeping. Tim, first, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, I'm ubiquitous. I'm sort of everywhere at the moment. But I no, you can find me on Instagram. Is a little at. Do you know in Greek they call the at sign papaki, which is a little duck, like the little ducks you put on the side of the loo.
In Hebrew they call it a strudel.
Oh, how wonderful! It's like that. But it actually got a real name. It's a French name. It's an arabesque. Do you think somebody doing ballet and that's the position that you're in? I don't know how you get your leg round like that. Some people get round anything. So yes, I do at Professor_Tim_Wilson, and I'm all over the place there. And then I've got a YouTube thing under the name of my partner, Zontool Films Limited. That's ZONTULFILMS Limited. all one word. And I've been putting up some things there which have got quite controversial, which is a bit shocking actually, to be controversial, and maybe misunderstood. But I'm clarifying those a little bit at the moment. And then I'm in the ascendant with Twitter. I'm finally getting to grips with Twitter, which is Prof_Tim_Wilson, and I put up a lot of political cartoons on Twitter actually, so I'm a little bit more risque on Twitter. And then I got a blog which is animate-tim.com, and there I'm a little bit more academic, I suppose. But there are pictures there too. I draw sort of generally. What I find so extraordinary is when I was a child, I used to draw the teacher when I got bored in the lesson, and now when I'm teaching, I tend to draw the students. And I don't think they know. I think they probably think I'm having a sort of academic moment and scribbling something. Actually,
you're actually trying
or something. Or the shape of their rather strange glasses, or the fact that girl over there is asleep. And I think, I'll be in that position very soon.
That was my question. Does drawing keep you awake?
Yes, it's essential. Certain TV programs. If I wasn't drawing, I'd be in another world. And people think, how do you manage to draw? Do you pause the television? The television is permanently paused in my mind for those programs because I'm bored out of my mind. So it sort of keeps me awake. But then occasionally I think this is a program I'm not going to enjoy, and I start drawing. I think I'm absolutely riveted. And there was one, Alex Ryder, absolutely fascinated me, and there was one about reality TV which had me completely bewitched. And one or two of the Gogglebox things have had me going. But yes, generally, if I'm starting to draw, it's because I think I'm not going to be able to survive this program. But then I don't do many programs. I find I can watch television early in the morning, and then I'm sort of okay. But it's a bit socially unacceptable to watch TV in the morning. But after 5 o'clock, switch the television on, and I'm away. I'm just.
First of all, lockdown. Second, you're an academic, right? So no, you don't work a 9 to 5. You can watch television whenever you want.
Thank you. I would take that as permission.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like you don't want to drink before 5 p.m. and you don't want to watch television before 5 p.m.
I would drink if somebody waved a decent malt whiskey under my nose at sort of 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd be away with it.
But not television. Television has to wait for 5 p.m.
No. And actually, I tend not to drink. So yeah, and I find these days now, I don't know, Karen, do you find this? That if you eat, even if I eat a small amount, I just want to sleep. I'm becoming a cat, I think.
little snacks, little naps.
Snooze.
Now, the only question is, are you going to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and run wildly around your entire house? I guess your cats are too old for this, but that's what my cat likes to do. Is in the middle of the night, she likes to get up and run around and knock things over.
No, my cats are now. Because the female cat finds stairs difficult, so she now sleeps downstairs, and the boy tends to come upstairs, spend a few minutes in the bed, and then go downstairs, and then come back upstairs and scream. So we've started to have slightly interrupted nights again. We were having interrupted nights because the female cat would get up and want to go to the loo, and I'd have to carry her downstairs. Now she's downstairs anyway.
Yeah, you can just get another litter box for upstairs.
We tried that. It doesn't seem to work.
Lisa, where can people find you?
I'm pretty much only on Twitter, and it's at Lisa Stanger. So Lisa, Stanger, like stranger, but no R in the middle.
Great. Okay, so coming up on Survivor NSFW, first of all, check out our new website at survivornsfw.com. Tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, Johnny will be talking with Lunch Lady Denise from Survivor China. Cool. I met Denise a few years ago at a fan event. She's great. She's funny. Johnny says that she's wonderful on this program. And so that's going to come out tomorrow. On Thursday, as normal, at 9 p.m., Zach is going to be back with Marcus Lehman. Also, if you enjoy our programming, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com. Patrons get access to additional episodes like our weekly Q&As, Castaway Watch-alongs, and other special programming. We also have a dedicated Facebook group where we play trivia and other games, cast fantasy seasons, and more. So if any of that seems interesting to you, if you want to be Johnny Fairplay's friend, I talk about this all the time, it really does work. I met Johnny because I bought a t-shirt, okay? And the rest is history. Next week, I'm very excited that I will be joined by Janet Carbon from Survivor 39, Island of the Idols. So this was the same season, Tim, that Elaine was on. It's the last new season that they've made in the US before they had the Winners at War. So Janet is going to be joining us. And Janet is a wonderful lady. She is around our age. She works as a lifeguard until recently. She just retired, but she was in charge of, the entire lifeguard service in her town in New Jersey. She was in charge of like 200 lifeguards. And on Survivor, just physically, she was an absolute badass. I mean, she was killing the 20-year-olds. So it will be really, really fun. And, she played an interesting game, and I'm sure it's going to be really, really fun to talk to her. So, and next week we are back at our regular time of 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT. So I hope to see you all there. And in the meantime, please stay safe, wear your masks if you're in a place where that's necessary, stay healthy, and we will see you again next week on Survivor NSFW Rewind. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.